What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Betting the House. It's episode 6. My name is Sully, and as always, we are live on the Alithio Network YouTube. Don't forget to check out the network's other shows like Chicago Hockey Radio, Forum Blues, Good Morning Hockey, Let's Cool One. Like all Thursdays, we're going to be running through some football, both NFL and college, as well as some hockey and the playoffs for the WNBA and MLB. Before we get into that, and our recap, we have a little bit of a gambling warning. The following content may discuss topics related to gambling. Gambling can be addictive and is not suitable for all individuals. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, help is available. In the U.S., contact the National Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org for resources and support. Illinois residents can also contact 1-800-426-2537 for local assistance. Please gamble responsibly and be aware of the risks involved. Must be 21 years or older if gambling in Illinois. All right. Without further ado, let's recap our Tuesday's bets. Over in the MLB, Tuesday night, Philadelphia played the Mets, dropped game 3 there, so that didn't hit. However, last game of the night, San Diego money line hits minus 152 odds. Let's go. Woo! Wednesday, we went 3 for 4 with the Tigers at plus 1.5 at minus 192. New York Mets money line winning the series, moving on to the conference finals, minus 104. Kansas City unfortunately dropped game 3 to the Yankees, but don't worry, we're talking about them later. And finally, the Dodgers money line hits plus 132 odds. Let's go. Moving over to the WNBA, the Connecticut Sun did not do so hot. They got blown away in the last game. Plus 4.5 did not hit. College football, Tuesday. Liberty, I know I said minus 17.5. They only won by a touchdown. Whatever. Wednesday, New Mexico State, Jacksonville State. I had over 58.5 at minus 115 odds. It hit. Let's go. Moving over to the NHL. Tuesday, Bruins, Panthers. Definitely way over my 5.5 under, so that didn't hit. However, the Utah Hockey Club, game 1 of their inaugural season, beat the Blackhawks. I had them at Utah minus 1.5 at plus 142 odds. It hits. Wednesday, Rangers money line against the Pens. It hits minus 138 odds. And my last recap bet is Edmonton yesterday at minus 1.5. That didn't do so hot. They got blown away. I think the final score was 6-0. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Overall, though, we're trending up, 7 hits, 6 misses. That's over 50%. We're improving, boys. All right. There's our recap. Without further ado, let's get into upcoming bets. In the NFL tonight, Thursday Night Football, 49ers in Seattle taking on the Seahawks. I have Seattle at plus 3.5 with odds being set at minus 115. The 49ers, they were in the Super Bowl last year, but they've been really struggling this year. They're 2-3 starting, falling short of a lot of expectations despite their injuries. A big concern of mine is their fourth quarter play. They've only scored 22 points over these 5 games in the fourth quarter. While McCaffrey still is out, the rest of the team is healthy. And even though the defense is struggling, they're ranked 22nd in third down stops, 24th in yards allowed per pass. They're coming off a recent loss. They face a tough test against an equally frustrated Seahawks team. Seattle's defense faltered last week, 24 first downs, 420 yards to the Giants, despite Malik Neighbors not suiting up. Injuries to key defensive players contributed to that performance, but their offense, led by Geno Smith, is poised to rebound against this weakened 49ers defense. I think this should be a pretty evenly matched, and I think the Seahawks are likely to keep it within a field goal. All right, moving on to Sunday. Jacksonville Jaguars, Chicago Bears, London, 8:30 in the morning. I have Bears minus 1.5 spread at minus 115 odds. Like I said, we're back in London for the second week in a row. This time, Jags and Bears. Last week, the Vikings beat Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, leading to the contentious Robert Saleh firing. Now the British fans will get to see a battle between the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, and the former number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence. After a rough start here in Chicago, Williams has definitely led these Bears to 2 straight wins, 3 touchdowns, and he's definitely showing more comfort in that pocket besides Chicago's struggling run game. Johnson's emergence could provide a needed boost. Over on the Jags side, they earned their first win of the season against the Colts, but their offense still has some issues. Lawrence has struggled with his accuracy. Etienne is only averaging 1 yard per carry, and injuries have definitely hindered a lot of their key players like Evan Ingram. And, despite facing that Indianapolis team without Richardson and Taylor, Jacksonville only won by a field goal after giving up 24 points in the fourth quarter. Given these struggles, I'm backing the Bears in this London matchup. Moving over to noon, we've got the Washington Commanders in Baltimore taking on the Ravens. I have the Ravens spread set at minus 6.5 at minus 110 odds. The Commanders head into Baltimore to face the Ravens, and I honestly expect a pretty big win for the hosts. After starting 0-2, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens won 3 straight, beating the Cowboys, Bills, and Bengals. Their offense has been rolling, scoring 41 points in their last game with 27 after halftime. They face a Washington defense that allows 23 points per game, which is 20th in the NFL. Derrick Henry has returned to his form, rushing for 442 yards over these last 3 wins. And I think, honestly, he thrives against this Commanders defense that gives up 130 yards per game. Rushing yards per game, sorry. Daniels, on the other hand, he's definitely a front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's been excellent. But he hasn't really faced a whole lot of tough defense outside of the Buccaneers. Their offense has been strong recently, averaging 38 points over the last 3 games. But those were against weaker defenses. The Commanders rely heavily on the run game, second in the NFL with 178.4 rushing yards per game. But Baltimore's defense ranks first in rushing defense, allowing just 60.4 yards per game. The Ravens didn't cover their 8.5 point favorites against the Raiders last week. They typically dominated home, winning by an average of 17.8 points in their last 10 home victories. I think they continue that trend and win big against the Commanders. A couple other games at noon. I have Cleveland Browns in Philadelphia taking on the Eagles. I personally think that goes over, which is 42.5 at minus 110 odds. Tampa Bay goes to New Orleans to take on the Saints. I have the Bucks at minus 3.5 with minus 110 odds. the Colts in Tennessee taking on the Titans. Honestly, I think this one could go either way. I have the Titans money line which is minus 134 odds. Texans, Patriots at noon also. Excuse me. I have the Texans either their spread at -7 at minus 110 odds, or I think it could definitely be an under game, which is set at 38.5 at minus 115 odds. Cardinals, Packers also at noon. Last game at noon. Packers, I have their spread -5.5 at minus 106 odds. Moving on to the 3 p.m. games, there's 4 of them. So Steelers, Raiders at Las Vegas. I think Las Vegas takes it money line. Odds are plus 136. Falcons go to Carolina to take on the Panthers. I'm thinking over, which is set at 46.5 points, which is minus 120 odds right now. The last one I don't want to talk about, Lions at Dallas playing the Cowboys. I think Detroit takes it with minus 164 odds. The game at 3 p.m. I do want to talk about, though, is Chargers in Denver taking on the Broncos. I have Denver spread plus 2.5. Odds set at minus 102. Yeah, this is a very tense AFC West matchup, as the Chargers head into Mile High to take on the Broncos. Surprisingly, Denver is 3-2 after starting 0-2, with notable wins over the Buccaneers, Jets, and then a dominant victory, 34-18 over the Raiders. Their rookie quarterback, Nix, hasn't been stellar, but he's been reliable, avoiding interceptions in his last 3 games. Denver's defense, though, has been the real key, allowing just 47 points over the last 4 games, meaning 11.75 points per game, and ranking second in passing yards allowed per attempt. With only 4 touchdowns given up through the air, they should be able to contain Herbert and the Chargers. LA had a little bit of extra time to prepare after their bye week. Their recent form, very concerning. After their wins over the Raiders and Panthers, they struggled with their back-to-back losses in the Steelers and Chiefs, scoring just 10 points in each. Herbert has yet to surpass 179 passing yards in any of his first 4 games this season. And facing Denver's tough defense could be very frustrating for him. I think the Broncos are very well positioned to keep this game within a field goal, if not win outright. And then the final game for Sunday, 7 p.m., Cincinnati Bengals in New York to take on the Giants. I have the over 48.5.
Aren't they playing the Jets?
No,
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say 49ers?
No, you said the Giants.
Yeah, it's Bengals, Giants. No, the 49ers and Seattle are playing Thursday.
Ah.
Oh, you said
I
Jets.
said the Jets, yeah.
No, they play Monday night.
Okay.
Buffalo at Jets. I'll get to that. I was going to get to that in just a sec. Yeah, like we were just talking about, Monday night, last game of the week. The Bills take on the Jets in New York. I have the Jets covering their spread, which is plus 2.5 at minus 108 odds. Like we talked about a little earlier, the Jets, they were coming off that loss in London to Minnesota. Didn't have a bye week, but they did get an extra day of rest. Aaron Rodgers dealing with a high ankle sprain. He's expected to play, though. The Bills are also dealing with their own quarterback ankle issues. Josh Allen, his injury, and back-to-back losses against the Ravens and Texans. Their offense, though, even though it started really strong, they've been struggling against tougher defenses, ranking 25th in EPA per play over the last 2 weeks. New York's defense has allowed 53 points since week 1 and ranks second in EPA allowed per play. With the spread moving to Bills -3, I'm quite hesitant to back Buffalo against the strong Jets defense. That's all I've got for national football, but let's move into college. 3 games tonight. I'm not really going to talk about any of them. Coastal Carolina, James Madison, 6:30 tonight. Look for the over, which is set at 60.5, odds -110. Middle Tennessee, Louisiana Tech, 7 p.m. I think this one goes under, set at 50.5, also -110 odds. And then UTEP, Western Kentucky, also 7 p.m. And this one too, I take the under, 58.5, -110 odds. Friday, Northwestern Maryland, 7 p.m. I have Maryland winning by 10, -110 odds. UNLV versus Utah State, 9 p.m. Look for the over, which is set at 65.5 at -110. Number 16, Utah, going to Arizona State, 9:30. Honestly, I think Arizona State covers their spread, which is set at +6.5, again at -110 odds. I think this is a low-scoring grind. The Sun Devils have definitely established themselves as an excellent rush defense, holding Kansas to a almost harmless 151 yards on the ground last week. Utah is definitely going to be a real test, though, and without their quarterback, I don't think the Utes have been nearly as effective on the ground. They were held to just 84 points on the ground and lost to Arizona, and they forced Utah to throw the ball 40 times. And honestly, that's how you beat Utah. For the Sun Devils, the key is to the game is stopping the run. If you can stop the run, force Utah to make more throws than they want, and keep the scoring down, they have a chance. I don't really expect ASU to score a whole lot against this Utah defense, though. So they definitely will have to do their work on the defensive side. It is Friday night at Arizona State, and Utah may or may not be missing their quarterback. If he somehow plays, I think this line moves up closer to something like +10. If he doesn't, I think we're getting a bargain at +6.5. Moving on to Saturday's games. I didn't want to bring them all up, but I just want to shortly talk about 2 and mention 2 others. First one I want to talk about, Purdue, Illinois, 2:30 p.m. I think Illinois takes it, -19.5 spread at -110 odds. They're a contender in this conference this year, and Purdue is dead in the water and kind of spiraling downward. Illinois is 4-1 with wins over Kansas and Nebraska, holding their own against Penn State on the road in a 21-7 loss. Illinois has made it clear that they are a good football team. Purdue, not really. They could probably suit up 45-year-old Drew Brees and probably Zach Edey and be more competitive. They have been dismantled by Notre Dame, Wisconsin, manhandled by Nebraska too, and Illinois might be better than any of those teams. I know this is a big number for a conference game, but I think Illinois covers this. This one I wanted to talk about a little bit. Number 2, Ohio State versus number 3, Oregon. 6:30. I'm taking the under at 52.5, set at -105 odds. This is one of the season's most anticipated games. Takes place this weekend with Ohio State heading to Oregon in this top 5 matchup. I had a couple early doubts about the Ducks, but, those faded when they played Boise State in week 2, and they've been strong since dominating Oregon State in week 3, especially in the trenches. Ohio State looks like the most complete team so far, but this will definitely be their toughest test yet, with both their offenses. With both their offense led by Will Howard and, their NFL level defense facing pressure. Both teams dominated Michigan State, kind of showing how evenly matched they are. While I do lean a little bit towards Oregon as home underdogs, I think the best bet is the under. The total seems too high given how strong these defenses are on both sides. 2 other games I wanted to mention. Number 1, Texas takes on number 18, Oklahoma at 2:30 also. I think that goes over 50.5 at -110 odds. And then number 9 Ole Miss taking on taking on number 13 LSU, 6:30. I think LSU covers their spread, plus 3.5, minus 115 odds. Yeah, that's all I've got for football. Let's move into NHL, unless you have anything to say about those, Raven.
No, I'm very bad at college football betting. Plus,
Yeah.
the last 2 weeks of college football have thrown any ounce of confidence I have in betting in this sport. So I honestly would feel better just flipping a coin and taking those than doing research into the sport. But the hockey games, I think, my one hockey bet did not hit, sadly.
Yeah.
But, I feel a little bit more confident betting in hockey than
Yeah.
college football.
Well, speaking of which, we're about to move over to that. So let me clarify. I'm only going to talk about the 9 games tonight and the 4 tomorrow. I'm going to let everyone, including myself, have a little bit of a rest over the weekend from NHL just because they just got started and I don't want to burn you guys out. First game I have tonight, game started 6. We've got the LA Kings, Buffalo Sabres. Look for the under 6.5 at minus 132 odds. We've got the Florida Panthers in Ottawa taking on the Senators at 6 p.m. also. I also have the under for that one. It's also under 6.5 at minus 118 odds. The Leafs travel to New Jersey to take on the Devils. I have the Leafs money line at plus 116. The game I wanted to talk about that starts at 6 is the Montreal Canadiens, Boston Bruins. I think Boston covers the spread at minus 1.5 at even odds, meaning plus 100 odds. The Canadiens kicked off their season with a 1-0 win over the Leafs, thanks to a power play goal from Cole Caulfield. Definitely a big improvement from them from last season's 2 rough losses against the Leafs. Now they head to Boston for a back-to-back. Last season they did really struggle when they had no rest, going 1-12-1. On the other side, the Bruins lost 6-4 to the Panthers on Tuesday in a playoff rematch. After falling behind 5-1, their offense definitely came alive, but they couldn't avoid that defeat. Swayman missed preseason due to the contract dispute, but I think he is expected to start against the Canadiens. Boston straight up is a little bit too pricey. I would consider the puck line instead. Moving on to 6:30 game, we have Utah Hockey Club in New York playing the Islanders. I have the over at 5.5 at minus 130 odds. 7 p.m. games, we have Penguins Red Wings. Look to take the Red Wings money line at minus 137. Blue Jackets Wild, also at 7. I think Columbus covers their spread at plus 1.5, which the odds are set at minus 125. And then Stars Predators, 7 p.m. I think the Predators take this money line, which is set at minus 102. The Stars had a great season last year, mostly due to their defense and goaltending, which saw Tanev and Suter leave, both being their tough defensive defensemen. With this new defensive core and the health of Johnson being uncertain, I'm not really convinced that the Stars will be able to carry over last year's success to the start of this year seamlessly. Whereas, the Predators have made the biggest acquisitions in free agency, signing Steven Stamkos along with Jonathan Marchessault, having a stable defense by Roman Josi and Saros. The Predators' offseason signings should be able to bring the spark to this offense and kind of elevate them into the upper level of the NHL, if that makes sense. I think these teams are built very similarly and almost evenly matched, but I think the free agency signings, along with home ice, give the Preds the extra boost they need to take this one. And then the last game of tonight, St. Louis Blues take on the San Jose Sharks, 9:30 tonight. I have a San Jose Sharks money line at plus 138 just because I can't wait to see what Macklin Celebrini does and what he brings to this team. Moving on to Friday. Tampa Bay goes to Carolina to take on the Hurricanes, 6 p.m. I have the over 6.5 at minus 104 odds. The Blackhawks travel to Winnipeg to take on the Jets, 7 p.m. I have the Jets minus 1.5 at plus 118 odds. St. Louis Blues go to Vegas to take on the Golden Knights, 9 p.m. I have the over 5.5 minus 134 odds. Raven, do you think you could actually look up the odds for this really quick?
Which one?
Philadelphia Flyers, Vancouver Canucks. I guess it didn't save while I was setting them. Let me see if I can find it really quick too. Oh. Honestly, just by how these look I think
From what I am seeing, Sully, I am seeing Canucks minus 166, Flyers plus 140, over under 6.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these odds right now, and I don't really like them. I think probably the best bet is under 6.5 on FanDuel. It's probably 6 elsewhere, but yeah, minus 122 odds. Look for that tonight. That's all I've got for, like I said, I was going to give both you guys and myself a rest from watching so much hockey. With that being said, let's move over to the WNBA. Finals, game 1 tonight. Minnesota Lynx in New York to take on the Liberty, 7 p.m. Honestly, I went with a same game parlay here. I had Breanna Stewart over 20.5 points, minus 118 odds, and Ionescu over 27.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which is set at minus 108. And the total of that parlay would be plus 254, by the way. Stewart, the finals, 2-time finals MVP, has been averaging 22.7 points in the championship round across her 9-year career, clearing this total in 7 of those 10 starts in the WNBA finals. She also scored 21 points in game 1 of last year's final round. She's fallen short of this mark in her last 3 games, but she dropped 38 in her last game against the Lynx. The strength of this Minnesota defense is inside with shot blocking center Smith and forward Collier, meaning the defensive player of the year, roaming the paint. I do still expect Stewart to get hers against this dynamic duo, but I also think Ionescu takes advantage of these guards tonight, especially after a pretty bad showing in her last year's finals debut against the Aces star-studded backcourt. She's played a bigger year for the Liberty this year, averaging 18.2 points, 6.2 assists, and 4.4 rebounds, which is 28.8 combined to finish 6th in MVP voting. She's also tallied a combined 31.1 PRA in 6 playoff starts to help New York get to this point and return here. So, like I said, parlay, total odds, plus 254. Let's move over to the MLB playoffs. With the Mets having won it and moving on last night, we only have American League games tonight. Game 4s also, by the way. NL is game 5s. But, Guardians take on Tigers tonight, 5 p.m. Honestly, I have the under at 6.5 with the odds being minus 106. The Tigers used 3 pitchers for more than an inning in their Wednesday win, and none of whom were their starter. Their manager calls this pitching chaos, a strategy that has worked in non-Scooble games. It's clear or I'm sorry, it's unclear who will start in game 4, but Olsen, who pitched well after a rough start by Holton last time, he's expected to be the main bulk pitcher. He's performed well against the Guardians with their hitters having just a .558 OPS against him. On the Guardians side, Bibby threw 4.2 scoreless innings in their 7-0 game 2 win. He faced the Tigers 4 times in the regular season, improving with every outing, and is really expected to pitch well with Cleveland needing a strong performance. Despite Cleveland's cold offense, their bullpen remains solid, so I expect a low-scoring game. Moving on to the other AL game, we have the Yankees, Royals. I think New York puts it away, money line, set at minus 154 odds. They took a commanding lead last night, and a big reason for that was Giancarlo Stanton. He went 3 for 4 yesterday, and there definitely wasn't any hit bigger than his solo home run in the top of the 8th that gave the Yankees the 3-2 lead. With them being 1 away from clinching this, I think they send out their ace, Garrett Cole, to the mound. And I think he faces Michael Wacha in game 4. In game 1, Cole threw 5 innings, giving up 3 runs on 7 hits. He wasn't his normal dominant self in game 1. And, some may blame the extended time off from his previous start, but I don't think it matters. He thrives in the postseason. I think he'll be able to find his groove. He's 10-6 with a 3.05 ERA in 18 postseason starts in his career. So I think this pressure is definitely nothing new for him. Like I said earlier, for the Royals, they're going to be handing the ball to Michael Wacha, who's also struggled in game 1, where he gave up 3 earned runs on 4 hits in 4 innings pitched. He's been struggling in the postseason throughout his career, only going 4-3 with a 5.36 ERA. And I think this pressure might be a little bit too much for him. Even with Judge still struggling at the plate, the Yankees offense still has been able to string together a few hits and score enough runs to take this series 2-1 right now. I think the Yankees, great position to clinch the series on Thursday, which is why I'm backing them on the money line. And then the last game I wanted to talk about was game 5, all or nothing, Padres-Dodgers, 7 p.m. tomorrow. Look for the over 8 set at minus 105 odds. I think, the last 2 games have been just each other blowing each other out. So I think this time it's going to come down to who's hitting what, Raven, anything to add on those?
No, I'm pretty steadfast about. I think the Padres take it. I don't.
Yeah,
I think
so
against the MLB's wants and needs. I think it just makes the most sense. But I don't know. At the same time, I do think it's going to be a close fight between the two. Detroit, you picking the under, I totally back that. I mean, they're doing everything they can with what they got, and it's great to see them here. Even I do think Cleveland will win the game, though.
Yeah.
They've had a really quiet season. They've made the postseason the last 2 years. They've really just been steady in, not the biggest showcase of the year with, the Dodgers and the Yankees. And even the Royals were, I feel like, more talked about than them in, mainstream media. But overall, I do think it's going to be Cleveland versus New York.
Okay, yeah, for the AL?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mets versus San Diego for NL.
Dude, that'll be weird.
But that also leaves the possibility for Yankees Mets, which I have heard so much about. That'll just be an awesome World Series to have. But at the same time, it's like I would like someone else.
Yeah,
please.
It's like, congrats.
Plus,
you have the 2 teams from New York that
I don't know if you know this stat, Sully, but as a Brewers fan, it is long known that every single time the Brewers get into the postseason, the team that they lose against usually makes it to the World Series. So they will either win. So I do think the Mets will make it. I don't know if they will win it. But just a fun little fact there for those baseball fans out there.
Yeah, well, that'll be a next week conversation, it sounds like. Well, if you've got nothing else, that's all I've got for today. Tune in for more next Tuesday, 11 a.m. on the Alithio Network YouTube page. Also, don't forget to check out Alithio Network's other shows, like I said earlier, Chicago Hockey Radio, Forum Blues, Good Morning Hockey, Let's Cool One. They're available everywhere. Audio for this will also be available shortly after the live ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube or smash the 5-star ratings and follow us on Spotify and Apple Pods. Have a good night, you guys. Peace. See you Tuesday.